Right. Building a scalable microfrontend for distributed and independent teams. That's what I'm going to talk to you about. I wasn't actually expecting the room to be almost full, but that's nice. Right. So the thing is, self-service front-end for that supports multiple frameworks, independent development and deployment, and rapid scaling. That's the thing for today. I'm a principal software engineer at Signicat, and over the years I've been having multiple roles. I've been a developer, I've been an architect, product owner, different stuff, but I always kind of end up back in code whenever I can. I like to have my hands dirty. And as you see from the color of my hair, I've been longer around than the earlier speaker. So I've been around since started with my first computer. That was a ZX Spectrum. No, Sinclair ZX81 Spectrum or whatever it's called, I can't even remember, with a blasting 1 kilobytes of RAM. I upgraded to a BBC Micro later on. That now lives in the Norwegian Technical Museum, so I'm kind of already part of history. I also started with a startup making wirelessly controlled guitar effects. So that was on top of my normal job. So whenever you can mix tech and rock and roll, why do you need sleep, right? Well, these days my kids are grown up. Now I spend my time writing code, breaking code, and occasionally breaking some board in taekwondo classes. I need to see some of my colleagues here. Yep. So here's a quick overview of what we'll talk about. Recognize the need for change. The challenge we faced as our teams and products grew, and we need to push that, we need to rethink how we build stuff. Then I'll go through what our vision was, kind of to give teams full independence while we still maintain consistency and across the organization. Next up, how we brought the vision into life with microfrontends, enabling independent deployments, faster iterations, and fewer dependencies. And then I'll probably look a little bit on the styling part, the design system, how we did that, or a little bit about it, and then finally saw how we kickstarting teams, no relation to taekwondo whatsoever, but with tools and clear conventions and kind of, yeah, helping them start building right away. So, first of all, need for a change. Signicat is a company that has been growing quite a bit lately, or in the previous years. And part of that has been through acquisition. And when you do acquisitions, then of course there are different tech stacks and other complexities. So each of these companies that we acquired, they came in with their own kind of self-service solution, their own self or service portal. And they were very different tech stacks, different layouts, different dashboard, some with few insights, some with just email support. And it was kind of a little bit of a mess. Multiple dashboard, overlapping functionality, customers needing, yeah, more than just logins and yeah. So it was a bit ironic. We need to log in multiple times if you need to do different things. And this is a bit ironic because we're actually in a business of making identity and logging easier. And none of these acquired companies, they use the same technology. They don't use the same terminology. So we needed to come up with a standard naming. Yeah, so we realized that we needed to make some unified self-service experience. Yeah, one place where a customer can configure, manage, and monitor their products. So now, imagine you need to do this, yeah. That's where we came to microfrontends, right? So then we came with the vision. We started kind of, how do we envision this going forward? we needed something different than we had, right? So we couldn't just take one portal, or we could have done that, but we looked at the different parts and see, is there some dominator here? And then we couldn't find anything. So we needed to start from scratch and see that we need to build something that we can unify everything in a way that people can work independently. So we needed somewhere where you can, like a symphony, of course, we have different instruments, they can play on their own, and then together, they play nicely together. So we didn't just want a shared UI. So we needed a platform for this. So we can handle a long list of requirements, and some of them were fairly non-negotiable. So first of all, there was a single entry point. So single front door where everybody comes in. You need to do authentication once, not needing to load into different places for different stuff. And then we have multiple data centers. So we need somewhere where the data is stored in a single place, and the customer will access that data center without going through some proxy. And this is due to we are in a regulated industry where we need compliance. And of course, we need flexibility to pivot fast. Because the only thing that we do know is that things are going to change. And then, of course, we need scalability. New things come in, new acquisitions, new product, new something from leadership, whatever. And with the old system, we had separate teams managing each dashboard, and that sounds great until you realize that this team, they need to know everything about everything to kind of build anything. So we flipped the coin, or we turned this around, and then instead we said that, okay, each team needs to organize their own stuff. Whenever they need to do some change, then they ship it, then they do the change. They don't need to organize or talk to somebody else. So yeah. And also, the final thing is that we needed something that could fail by itself without crashing the whole thing. And that is the Microfrontend, right? So we ended up with. So we looked into, is there a CMS solution that could solve all this? But we couldn't find anything. And all of them fell short for some reason, for some way. Mostly because the multiple data center part where you can't kind of flow through one or a proxy. So we ended up with something more flexible. So that's something that gave us a shell that kind of can build upon. And I already kind of had the music metaphor, and it's kind of the thing is that when you have an orchestra, you have one instrument, you can train by yourself, you can practice, and everything can fix it. And then when you play together, it's an symphony, and that's the thing. You could probably say that about monoliths too, but the thing is that you have one repository for each team, right? So now I see I need to speed up my talking here, because if not, I'm not going to finish. So this is our layout of the Microfrontend. So I highlighted in red the different parts of the application, right? So each little piece here is its own app. It lives in its own repository. It's shipped by itself whenever you need an update. The team just ships it. And this is a pure front-end solution. There is absolutely no back-end here. Well, back-end in the sense that you need to load the data or the front-end, but that's the only back-end you have. Right. So let's talk about how we brought this to life. As I said, we needed a platform for this. And we broke it into 5 essential parts. So first up, we have the bootloader. And that is a small vanilla JavaScript application. There's no React framework or anything in it. And the only thing it cares about is knowing or loading and figuring out which app is to be at which route, and depending on which access that user, currently logged in user has. And we found a framework called a single spa, which is kind of a contradiction, but anyway, that kind of orchestrates all this. And then next up, we have the app catalog. That's basically just a JSON file living in its own repository, where teams can go in and whenever they need a new app, they just add it there. It says, okay, this app lives at this route and has these, the user needs the following access to see it. And we do have some shared libraries because you do need something in common. Because I mentioned the data centers, and that's where we need something that kind of lets the user, depending on which customers or which user it is, talk to the right data center. That's one of the things. Also, shared libraries for figuring out what's the access of the customer. Can he see the stuff he needs to see? And also, there will be some communication, even though the apps are independent. So there will be some shared libraries for that. But essentially, a minimized number of shared libraries. And of course, styling. We need some kind of shared styling because you need things to look right. It needs to look the same, regardless of who's shipping the app. And then finally, we have the microfrontends themselves. Right. So we started up with building this, and there was one poor soul starting with this. I think he's in the room today. Doesn't matter. But we finally, or we realized quickly that we needed to be more people. So we grew quite quickly and became a team that was throughout Europe, handling all these part of the company or the platform. But once it was up and running, that team was no longer needed. So now all this functionality is distributed among other teams. So now this platform just lives by itself. So we do have some guilds, which is kind of like a community throughout the company that handles all this. Right. So independent development, right? So one of the important parts is that we need team autonomy. And when you have a company that grows through acquisitions, people come in with different tech stacks. And that's fine, right? And some prefer React, some prefer Angular, some use Svelte, yeah. So we wouldn't block progress just because we wanted to focus on one tech stack. So we say we need different tech stacks. And this architecture allows you to have different tech stacks. And it allows you to evolve on your own pace. And you want to upgrade to React 18. I don't know which version is on React currently. Somebody else is handling the front end anyway. But if you want to upgrade, just go for it. You want to try out Svelte, go for it. And you don't need cross-team coordination to get an approval, to get started. We even had a team that was doing Scala.js, or whatever it's called. That app does no longer exist, but it's doable. And this flexibility is a huge win, right? Because you don't need to have coordination between 5 or 10 teams and to figure out which framework version to upgrade to. And this is a classic problem, right? So you might think that, okay, but how do you solve that? No shared dependency, no module federation, nothing like that. So what we simply do is just, when you build your app, you just compile everything into the same app and then you ship it. And then think, oh, that's going to be a huge amount of data. But it's not really, because everything is lazy loaded in a single SPA framework. So a module is between 50 and 500 kilobytes. It's compiled into a single JavaScript file and just loads whenever you need it. And nobody's going through and clicking through all the links in an app on every time they go there. And it's not like a single SPA where you load the whole app up front. You just load whatever you need to see at the moment, and whenever you go to a new route, you load that little piece of JavaScript. And of course, browser caching will solve this for you. Right. And of course, independent deployment. That was also quite important. So what we did was we started out with Docker containers. So you can just have a Docker container and ship your app in there. Then you can also have the API behind if you like. But we figured out, that's not optimal. So what we did was set up storage buckets. Each team got its own storage bucket. Here we go. And then we had one domain on top, and the storage bucket is just a route within that domain. And then everything is available through CDN, so it's really quickly accessible. Teams can then deploy and roll back whenever they like. You deploy it, you just copy over a new file, and the old file is there. So if something fails, you just point to the old one. And since we have this app catalog, teams can just go in and register a new app. And if you have a new app, you just add it, and then you can also test it because it's not visible in any way. The only thing you need to know is the route. So you can just start testing. Of course, there's a full dev and QA environment, but eventually you can put it into production, test that it works before showing it to anyone. And a menu, of course, that's a separate configuration and a separate MFE. And this kind of gives the teams full autonomy for deploying. Right, so now, if I can click the right place here. But even though the apps are independent, they need to talk to each other in some way. So what we did is, we set up, we looked into multiple different versions of variation frameworks. Is there something we can use? Do we put an API that everyone talks to? What do we do? But we ended up with a pub/sub pattern, and we needed to build it ourselves because we couldn't find anything that fitted. But it's essentially a small library that you just include in your app, and then you say, publish this event. The event contains a catalog of all the defined events. Of course, you need to follow this. I'm trying to find a word here now, but I can't come to my mind, whatever. Help me out. Christian, what was the word I'm looking for? No. So we have to ship the events, and everybody needs to know what it looks like, and that is defined. So you can't just ship whatever you like, of course. You need to kind of subscribe to it. When you publish it, you need to subscribe to it. But a disadvantage of the pub/sub is that when you ship an event, it's kind of gone, right? So we needed to make this with a slight little twist. And that is, you need to keep all the events that you have published so that they can be replayed whenever the app is loaded and you need an event that is published. Did that make sense to anyone? Imagine you go into the dashboard and you say, okay, I want to look at this configuration. And then you select a menu and you want to see my OIDC clients, and you list up the OIDC clients. And then that app, for some reason, needs to know about where you are. Then, and since the event was published before the app was loaded, you need to replay the app, or the event. Yeah. Anyway, this thing is pure custom events, super simple. Okay, now I have 51 seconds to do the styling. So we started off with styling, and we started with simple CSS. And all the apps, they had their own CSS as well, and then we had a lot of conflicts. So we knew that we needed to do some design system, and started with web components. So that is what's now, it's a web components, and all the teams that are making apps, they need to use this style system and the web components and limit their CSS. Okay, I need to jump fast. I've been talking too much on the other slides. And one of the key things we had was the starter packs, where we had pre-built boilerplate code, pre-built for Vue, Angular, and React, and pre-configured for local testing, and you can read here, right, whatever we did. And that made it super easy and super fast development for the teams, right? And now a little bit over, bear with me. key takeaways. Microfrontend takes a little bit extra to handle because everybody has their own repo. In other cases, this would not fit. For us, this fit. It works. And you kind of need to look at this as a platform. And of course, the world would change, and you need strong contracts. And I think there have been other talks about design. That is important. Think design up front. Don't sprinkle in on top later on. That will not work. And then, thank you. Time's out. 1 minute ago. Single SPA and building microfrontends. That's a book I've been reading a lot about, or reading a lot. And I'll say thank you. There's no room for questions, but you'll see how I look. I'm one head taller than everybody else. You'll find me.